Hey, welcome to Socialism for All. This is S4A live stream number 18 being recorded on May 18, 2022. Normally I don't do two live streams in a row. We usually just do one per week, if one at all. But yesterday's was good, and I'm feeling a need to catch up on some of the current event stuff that I've had kicking around for a few weeks now, so wanted to get a little bit more into that in the live stream format. It's a little bit easier for me to record those right now than in the better produced format, I guess you could say. So the COVID update part 3 is almost done now, and it should be up right after this is posted. So if you're watching this recording on the YouTube channel, it probably will be up within 6 hours or so of that. It is a really long video. There's a lot of information in it, and I've been working on it. I dated the video whenever I started on it, Saturday. I'm not even really sure, and kind of wish I had not dated it because it's taken me 5 or 6 days to do it. But anyway, here we are and doing a live stream. So what I said I would do is start off with the last any chat leftovers from yesterday. So let me just go through those now. Otherwise, we're going to get into some plastic in the ocean stuff. We're going to get into Democrats and abortion, abortion rights, and whatever else I have kicking around in the folder. We got some interesting PATSOC fails, as usual. Patriotic socialism in the U.S. or other imperialist countries is a fail, and it manifests in all kinds of ways. But let me look through the chat log while we wait for more people to build up in the chat. Just announced that I was going live now. So let's see. Somebody said it will be interesting to see how workers' struggles develop worldwide as a result of the economic disruptions of COVID, war, food supplies changing, etc. Obviously, is bittersweet due to it coming out of the suffering of people. I think that is unfortunately the case. We see revolutions oftentimes happening in a post-war situation. That's not really a reason to cheer on war, obviously, because we're talking about usually imperialist aggression is what starts the war. We're in the age of capitalism, and capitalists, need to expand their operations by force. And where there is organized, class-conscious, working-class resistance to that, we stand some chance of, turning those efforts into another direction. It's, I think, definitely likely that COVID is going to keep causing massive disruptions. You will see in the part 3, which I've been talking about for, I've been hyping that up way more than most videos, but it's just taken me a while to do. And the stuff in it is, it's so crazy. Like, if they showed it on the news, that COVID shrinks your brain and all the other stuff that it does. So, like, for example, SARS coronavirus 1, that happened back in 2003, 2004, 60% of people who got that had liver damage from it. So, people are like, oh, why is China pursuing zero COVID? Because it fucks you up. Like, it's not some harmless cold or something. Like, it does serious damage in your body. And we looked yesterday, and that may have been where this comment came from in part, was the Bank of England noting that there's a spike in the percentage of people who are not currently working due to illness and who don't want to go back to work. Among women, it is the highest it's been maybe ever. The chart goes back to the early 90s, but it's the highest point at any point in the last 30 years. So this is not good for capitalism. And yeah, I think it's going to keep disrupting things, which may be driving in part the wars and then the whole food situation. Russia and Ukraine are massive grain exporters. They grow a lot of the wheat, for example, for the world. It's exported all over the world. And having those supplies dry up, that's who is growing the grain. And because of the war, it's just not getting done. So already there have been news articles about the crops are not being tended at all. So Let's see. Somebody says the only online thing I'm a part of these days is my Facebook book club group chat. The struggle in my union to get these guys to realize we can have power in the workplace if we actually take action as a union. Some guys have their balls in a jar in the office, and I've personally been threatened by some of the more reactionary union members. The fight must continue nonetheless. Yeah, so I want to get these guys to strike, but they're scared. So here's definitely a thing that people need to understand is uh, having a union is great, and it is step one, but it is only step one. Getting your union to actually like do things is a challenge. Actually, sometimes getting your union not to do bad things is another challenge. There's a movie called North Country. Charlize Theron is in it, but it's a real story. It's based on a book about a woman who was relentlessly harassed when she took a quote man's job in a mine. This is, I want to say, like Minnesota, like Dakotas, somewhere up in that area, upper Midwest area. Um, and that was like basically the union's official policy was sexism backed up by like threats of violence and other kinds of stuff. So, yes, organizing is important, but we also need a radical left socialist perspective in there as well to keep things moving in an actually socially positive class conscious direction. So, yeah, you can have a union that doesn't do shit. This is actually part of the reason why, since the 80s, unions were already in a decline since the 60s, like by the 80s. But it got really bad after the 80s because the unions became so kind of concessionist and do nothing that increasingly the workers were just like, what is the point of this? Well, we see now what the point was. Having no union versus having like an inactive union is even worse because if you have an inactive union, there's the potential for action, and you don't have to get it set up at least. But yeah, there's a lot of problems. I mean, also with just racism across the U.S. labor movement through the 20th century, there's a lot of problems. So people shouldn't get too starry-eyed about you need to actually know the whole history there to understand the upsides and the downsides, so that we can tilt things more towards the upsides and eliminate more of the downsides. It can't just be this sort of blind, like, this is the solution to everything. It's important and a needed step for getting working people organized, but it's not sort of just an end in itself, and that's important to understand. So, actually, it looks like that was most of the chat from yesterday, so that's good. We got the leftovers taken care of. I've been wanting to do that since we started doing this live stream thing, and it's the first time we've gotten to it. So let's see what's going on in the chat today. All right, people showing up and saying hi. Somebody says, I'm once again saying that people should vote for actual left-wing candidates when possible, with the DSA Dems being the compromise. So here's the thing. DSA just needs to stop endorsing Democrats, I think is the bottom line here. You cannot reform the Democratic Party. I think that the bare minimum is the Green Party, and you got to go from there because they don't take the corporate money. It's actually democratic. Like, if you get involved with the organization, you can have an impact. Like, through your membership, you can actually have an impact on the policies that the organization takes. That's not really the case with the Democratic Party. And, big capital controls the party. I was just posting about this in a, I think, succinct way. Here we go. Urgent reminder that the Democratic Party is owned by the 1%, exists to serve imperialism, and cannot be reformed. The U.S. left must quit the Dems and build an independent left party free of corporate money. The Green Party U.S. already exists and is an obvious starting point for the willing. Now, I was talking with somebody else who was in the comments, and this was on Twitter, and let's see what that comment was, because it was good, and I'm not trying to shame this person in any way. In fact, holding this comment up as an example, because I think it's a common situation that people are in, basically saying, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it now, but um, basically saying that, oh, here it is. So the comment says, my frustration is that I'm inexperienced and haven't got the slightest clue on how to do praxis, if that makes sense. There are local chapters of national orgs in my city, but they just want to occasionally do book club shit on Zoom. And obviously book club shit on Zoom, sometimes it's a starting point to something else, but, have events that are, sometimes a movie screening or a reading discussion or whatever, but that absolutely cannot be the extent of your activity. So, I responded to that person. I said, oh, you know what? We're coming in halfway. The important part here was good on me for completely spoiling the momentum there. Their original comment, to which what I just read was a response, was, shouldn't we as individuals be opportunists and adventurists until an org that the establishment respects as a viable threat to their status quo arises? It feels like we as a collective are sticking our thumbs up our asses, Monday morning quarterbacking GOP and DNC actions. So, no, you shouldn't be an opportunist or an adventurist. Those are mistakes in relation to your position. It's not just about being an individual, in other words. It's about having like left or right errors in terms of your politics. So I get what they're saying, but I wouldn't agree with that phrasing, really. I think that what they're getting at here is until there is an org that everybody can just happily join, that the establishment views as a real threat, shouldn't we not be members of stuff? And, anyway, my response to that was, here's the thing, orgs don't arise. That was the word that this person chose, was until a viable threat arises. So orgs don't arise, they are built by people like you and me. So what's happening is people keep waiting and waiting and waiting for someone else to do something, to deliver the product to them, rather than doing the difficult organizing work that is right in front of them. By the way, my response to the next thing that they said is that they haven't got the slightest clue, how to do that organizing work. And I'm like, okay. I said, I've taken shit for advising people to build the Green Party and DSA, but things like this are the obvious next step for mass organizing, not just vanguard. Okay, CPUSA is there, the trot groups are there, I guess there's some Maoist groups, whatever you think the vanguard should be organized around, those small organizations are there. And if you want to join that to have other people that you're working with on strategy and whatever, they don't have, I'll leave that alone right now. But are millions of people going to be joining those organizations? Not really. What are already much larger mass membership organizations are things like the Green Party and DSA currently, where you can get out, meet the left such as it is in your area, and network and build from there. So as far as this thing about, an organization that is a viable threat to their status quo, why do you think the Democratic Party takes the Green Party to court in states like Pennsylvania to get them kicked off the ballot? Why do you think they spent as much time as they did attacking Ralph Nader back in 2000 and 2004, blaming him for Bush getting elected, et cetera, et cetera? Why do you think they do that? But people waiting around for there's some perfect org that's just going to pop up. Fucking magical elves do not make socialist organizations or working people's political parties. We have to do that. You can't just wait around for some fucking capitalist to fund the project and hire employees. That's what people are used to thinking of in this society, because that's how things are usually presented to you, as a finished product, as a commodity that you don't see how the sausage gets made, etc. But the Democratic Party, for example, has like hundreds of millions of dollars behind it and many paid operatives. When we are trying to build an organization as the working people of the U.S., or I mean any other comparable country, it doesn't work like that. Like you have to start with what you've got, and build it. So get involved. I mean, contact the people in your area who are already doing something and ask them, what do they need help with? Because guaranteed they need help with something. So, I had a good exchange with this individual who was learning, and they said, I hear that because if one single ballot has a Democratic candidate worth a fuck to go to polls for, then obviously voting green when I know the other Dems are trash is real harm reduction. Anyway, I'm not processing that tweet right now, but the point is the Democratic Party is not reformable. We have to build an alternative, and when I say we have to build an alternative, I mean we have to build an alternative. It's not going to arrive on our doorstep. So all the people waiting around for the perfect thing to just arise, show up, just be delivered to you, it doesn't work that way, and you've got to stop thinking that way. All right, this is why, for example, Ralph Nader, not exactly a socialist, but big consumer advocate, well to the left of the Dems, critic of the Democratic Party from a actual left perspective, would sometimes do the libertarian opportunism thing that I think is one of the identifiable problems with today's Green Party. Can be worked on if we get more people in there working on it. But anyway, did that, but did people stick with it? No, a lot of people got peeled off by the attacks from the Democratic Party, saying you fucking Nader Green, whatever, you're responsible for Bush, this and that. I mean, Al Gore didn't win his home state, but sure. It's been the same refrain for decades now. But people didn't stick with it and didn't do the hard work of building up this party. Okay, we get it. You hate the Dems. How many podcasts are out there right now that just literally exist to trash the Democratic Party? And they deserve to be trashed. They're a garbage party that consistently, like I said, they're non-reformable, they're owned by the 1%, and they exist to serve imperialism. But how many people are doing the work of actually building an alternative? That needs to happen. It needs to happen. If we don't do it, it won't happen, okay? Again, there are no magical worker elves here. You're the worker elf, okay? And again, this is real life, not like Santa's workshop. But this is what has to happen. Now, as far as DSA, they need to break from the Democratic Party. I know that sometimes they run their own candidates, sometimes they endorse Greens. This really needs to become policy, so we need to get into that organization and struggle against the more liberal tendencies in that organization. If you can't struggle there, how do you think you're going to win a struggle anywhere? So get in there and, fight for it. And you may not have to fight. And when I say fight, I mean represent it and, field the attacks and whatever. It isn't necessarily nasty. Sometimes it can get nasty. But, sometimes it's just having a conversation with somebody who is on the wrong track. Actually, just the other day I was talking to somebody who was, sort of, I know to be left-wing. I hadn't talked to them in a while. And, they were talking a little libertarian, this and that, here and there. And this can happen being in this political environment. And I sort of just gave them, 4 or 5 other pieces from more of a socialist perspective to think about. And they got really excited. Sometimes, you got to fight for it, but it doesn't necessarily mean bloody knockout, horrible situation. But you got to get there, represent it, and, just push back on more of the liberal tendencies. It helps, and if we're going to build the left, and I really mean if we're going to build the left, because it hasn't been happening so far. You see more people coming around to trying to learn about what is socialist ideology, what is socialist history. That's great. Fully support that. But that is an initial step, agitation, education, then the organization. The organization is still, that has a question mark at the end of it. We have seen organizations like DSA grow, which, again, as next steps after the Democratic Party, that's important, okay? But we as Marxists need to get out there and make sure that it keeps going as far as it possibly can. Ultimately, it's not about, oh, my Vanguard group went from, 1,000 people to 5,000 people. That's great, but the actual task is engaging the working masses, like by the tens of millions, in class struggle and, forming whatever organizing hubs we have for that. If it's a political party that sometimes runs in and wins local elections, whatever, we need organizing hubs. If it's a political party, if it's whatever, DSA is, for example, not exactly a political party, we need these organizing and ideological hubs for people to base many different projects of class struggle out of, which sometimes will take the form of running a candidate in a gettable local election. Again, not having illusions about how far that's going to get you in and of itself, but it's something you do. Maybe it's 10 or 20% of your overall class struggle efforts. Do it. It's free advertising, do it. So, that being what it is, this is the question. Are we going to do it, or are people going to just go from, well, I used to support progressive Democrats to I dropped out completely? Well, you dropping out completely doesn't get us anywhere. So anyway, as far as the comment which kicked all this off about, people should vote for actual left-wing candidates when possible, with DSA Dems being the compromise, I'm increasingly feeling like encouraging any growth within the Democratic Party is really just a mistake. Really. Because you get these people in and they are beholden to the party more so than they are to the DSA endorsers. And that's, I think, what we're seeing. But getting people, like I was saying, involved by the tens of millions into the struggle, that's the actual task. The actual masses of working people have to figure this stuff out. You or I might see at this point that the Democratic Party is not reformable. I've seen that because I've been closely watching this for a long time and I've been invested in it. A lot of people haven't been. And, we can tell them that and we can be there to guide it, but they may not be ready to recognize that it's true. When will they be ready to recognize it? When they've seen it for themselves, when they've gotten invested themselves and they care about the outcome and they go, oh, holy shit, that socialist guy was right. So I think that, Bernie Sanders had, again, we talk about Bernie Sanders a lot. This was a big moment for the U.S. left, organizing by the stadium full. And Bernie had a great chance, even if he didn't feed everybody into the Green Party or start a new Labor Party or whatever, which was honestly a no-brainer, and it's a crime and selling everybody out that he didn't do it. But he could have, at a minimum, upped the messaging on, like, this party is not reformable, the Democrats are owned by the 1%, and, we'd be better off doing something else. He didn't really say that. AOC, I remember doing a story like a year ago on AOC was kind of saying that. She was like, working within the Democratic Party, it's like basically gets you nowhere. Of course, she sort of backed off of that. But that's the kind of messaging we actually need to do, because we're at the first steps stage here. And we need to peel people away from the Democrats and get them into something else. And actively, somewhat autonomously engaged in struggle and help to coordinate that and help to organize it towards constructive ends, making the most out of mistakes and successes. So anyway, I'm very reluctant to endorse anything remotely to do with the Democratic Party because, I know the arguments people make of like, oh, it's for ballot access. You're cozying up to a party that is going to actively try to wreck what you're doing. And I think it's better off from the organizing perspective of creating an organizing hub, of just being completely independent of that stuff. Again, I think people get real caught up in that, thinking too much about electoralism. But S4A, didn't you just talk about the Green Party? Yes. But what did I just say about the Green Party? That it is the base for organizing, the face of which, electoralism is just one part of the face of that. You got to do many different projects that are not electoral in nature. And to their credit, DSA does a lot of that. I really just think it's not just time, but way overdue. I mean, decades overdue to sever the ties with the Democratic Party. Seeing things like Roe v. Wade, that is, threatening the overturn of Roe v. Wade, there's no time left. And so if I sound like a sort of broken record of like, look, take the next step at a bare minimum, build up the Green Party, learn what lessons you can learn from building that up. And I don't know what those lessons are going to be because we haven't done it yet. But build it up, see what happens, and when large numbers of people collectively reach the same conclusions, then large numbers of people collectively, not at the command of some streamer podcaster, but large numbers of people collectively will come to the conclusion of what to do next. But that happens through struggle, that people see that. I mean, it can also be augmented and accelerated by studying history. But, people have to really come to see it as true, and usually that's through their own struggle. So, anyway. Speaking of, why don't we do, I know there's stuff building up in the chat, why don't we do some of the Democratic Party abortion Roe v. Wade stuff? So, where's my stuff? And why can't I ever get the stream program to start in the default directory that I want it to? Just why? Do I even have it? Here we go. So what do we have? Here is an old article. This is from the New York Times. Well, it's not that old. It's 2019. When Joe Biden, it's about an old event. When Joe Biden voted to let states overturn Roe v. Wade by Lisa Lehrer, 2019, it was a new era in Washington in 1981, and abortion rights activists were terrified. With an anti-abortion president, Ronald Reagan, in power, and Republicans controlling the Senate for the first time in decades, social conservatives pushed for a constitutional amendment to allow individual states to overturn Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court ruling that had made abortion legal nationwide several years earlier, 1973. The amendment, which the National Abortion Rights Action League called, quote, the most devastating attack yet on abortion rights, cleared a key hurdle in the Senate Judiciary Committee in March 1982. Support came not only from Republicans, but also from a 39-year-old second-term Democrat, Joseph R. Biden Jr. Can I just add, for 39, Biden looks like shit there. So that's Biden in his early career. What we're leading towards here is that the Democratic Party is functionally, and I mean, we know it's generally an anti-worker party. It's a pro-capital party, but it's an anti-abortion party. They allow anti-abortion Democrats in the party. I guess the numbers of those have been dwindling, but again, they choose not to exercise party discipline on this. So here's another one. This is from Real Clear Politics 2015 by Ian Schwartz. Hillary Clinton, I could compromise on abortion if it included exceptions for the mother's health. Okay. Hillary Clinton, my husband, of course, Bill Clinton, vetoed a very restrictive legislation on late-term abortions, and he vetoed it at an event in the White House where we invited a lot of women who had faced this very difficult decision that ought to be made based on their own conscience, their family, their faith, in consultation with doctors. Ultimately, though, it is their choice. And that's not highlighted here so much. Because a lot of times the family or whatever will be unsupportive, and women need to do, or it's, women now are not the only people who need abortions, but anyway, people who need abortions, ultimately, those are the people who need to make this decision, and everybody else needs to get out of their business. But anyway, those stories left a searing impression on me. Women who think their pregnancy is going well and then wake up and find some really terrible problem. Women whose life is threatened if they carry their child to term, and women who are told by doctors that the child they're carrying will not survive. Again, I am where I have been, which is that if there's a way to structure some kind of constitutional restriction that takes into account the life of the mother and her health, then I'm open to that. But I've yet to see the Republicans willing to actually do that, and that would be an area where if they included health, you could see constitutional action. So what are we talking about here? Restricting abortions as long as you provide exceptions for mother's health. Why do this? The majority of the population supports abortion in all or most cases, and then even more support beyond that. Well, let's talk to Nancy Pelosi. 2017, this is from New York Magazine, The Cut. Nancy Pelosi says Democrats' focus on abortion access is hurting the party. Wow. I mean, that's just an anti-abortion stance right there. This article is by Claire Lansbaum. And sorry for all the clicking. Earlier this month, so this was after the 2016 election, and Sanders and Tom Perez of the DNC did that unity tour, which was just kind of a debacle. Like, Sanders would get out there and say one thing, Perez would say the exact opposite. They would pretend that this was unity. It was fucking absurd, and yet more evidence Bernie Sanders should not have stayed with the Democratic Party. It just was never going to work, and they're going to like try to defeat every single thing he did. Earlier this month, Senator Bernie Sanders and DNC head Tom Perez gave a unity tour. Sorry, I just have to add, yeah, it's just the Democratic Party is the wrong venue for this ideological struggle. I mean, let them have what they're going to have, which is the 1% dominated narrative that is required by the people who own the party. You're just not going to get honest ideological struggle in that party. You need an actually more democratic, non-money dominated venue to have that ideological struggle. Sanders absolutely, I mean, and he still has yet to state this conclusion. I'll state it for him, though. This was a total failure, and what he demonstrated is you cannot organize within this corporate-owned party. Anyway, so they gave a unity tour, during which they suggested that abortion rights were a disposable part of democratic ideology. Later, Sanders added that stumping for anti-choice... Sorry. Really loud, obnoxious motorcycle going by. Later, Sanders added that stumping for anti-choice candidates is the kind of thing Democrats need to do, quote, if we're going to become a 50-state party. Wow. Even Sanders. I had not heard that one. I don't know. I mean, one thing we do know about the media is they never stop trying to distort what Bernie Sanders said. I'll give Sanders the benefit of the doubt there because that sounds very much unlike something he would say. But maybe we can follow up with that later. I don't know what he said. I didn't hear anything to that effect. And on Tuesday, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi added to that, telling the Washington Post that the party should be open to anti-choice candidates. Quote, "This is the Democratic Party. This is not a rubber stamp party," Pelosi said. She added, as Sanders implied in January, that abortion access isn't a central part of Democratic ideology. Quote, "In our caucus, one thing unifies us, our values about working families. Some people are more or less enthusiastic about this issue or that issue. They'll go along with the program, but their enthusiasm is about America's working families." And, let me just point out, sometimes America's working families need abortions. And she went even further, blaming Hillary Clinton's loss, amazing, on Democrats' focus on social issues like marriage equality and abortion rights. So Pat Socks take note, Nazballs, all the other right-wing opportunists. You might be right at home in the Democratic Party. You know what? That's why, this is quoting Pelosi, that's why this is why Trump won, guys. This is why Donald Trump is president of the United States. The evangelicals and the Catholics, anti-marriage equality, anti-choice. That's how he got to be president. Everything was trumped literally and figuratively by that. Oh boy. So they're literally blaming, the woke mob for the Clinton loss there. And specifically abortion rights, which I thought, if you could sort of rely on one thing, with the Democrats, it would be at least that, on the social side. But, yeah, and, if you make your platform functionally indistinguishable from the Republican Party, why would anyone vote for you? This is the old thing of, like, when Republican voters are presented with GOP versus GOP light, they're just going to pick the GOP. Like, you don't actually win that way. As New York's Rebecca Traister pointed out, these comments from key Democrats are actually coming at a time when public support for abortion is relatively high. According to Pew, 57% of adults think abortion should be legal in all or most cases, and the vast majority of Democrats, 74%, agree. Even among moderate and liberal Republicans, the majority, 55%, say abortion should be legal. So they're literally just trying to ram totally unwanted right-wing agenda, force that onto people. It's like literally going against what the majority of people want. So they're inventing all these reasons that, trying to blame the electorate and this and that. No, this is just a right-wing agenda. It's not really that popular, and having two Republican parties is superfluous. People are just going to elect the real Republican Party in that case. I guess they're just banking on, the white nationalist tendencies in the actual Republican Party becoming too distasteful for some. But honestly. So finishing the article, what's more, Dems' apparent willingness to compromise on abortion access, an issue that's intrinsically linked to women's economic well-being, seems to overlook women's unprecedented involvement in the progressive movement. Let me just add here, because it is women, and it is primarily women, but also some trans men sometimes need abortions as well. So, anyway, Planned Parenthood says people for that reason. I think we can say people. Intrinsically linked to people's economic well-being seems to overlook people's unprecedented involvement. Well, here they're talking about the women specifically, unprecedented involvement in the progressive movement. Quote, open your eyes to where the resistance is really coming from. Elise Hogue, head of NARAL Pro-Choice America, told The Cut, quote, there are literally millions of women who have been pouring calls into Senate offices, House offices, going to town halls, filing to run for office. We're literally 3 months out from the largest protest in U.S. history that was overwhelmingly women in the name of women. That's where the resistance is. This is the Democratic Party base. So why is the place to start negotiating the place that pulls the heart out of the resistance? So like that's the beginning of negotiations, is selling out your most ardent supporters. Why would you do that? Well, again, this is about, it's a right-wing anti-worker party, and they're not really interested in just the rest of it, doing what people want, protecting workers' rights, etc. I do have a longer article, which I'm not going to read right now. I might do another video on that. It's more about just the Roe v. Wade situation overall, but there are some tidbits. It's Livestream Time. Live streams are the grab bag, loose ends segment of the channel, so yeah. This is not a reformable party. It's a party that is more and more right-wing with time. It's owned by the 1%. It exists to serve imperialism. I don't know how many times this needs to be said before people start moving away from it and not just dropping out, but doing something in its place. That needs to happen. Again, the Green Party's right there. It's in all 50 states. If you can't even be bothered to do that as a bare minimum, where are you expecting this change to come from exactly? The sky? Like spontaneous? Like that spontaneity thing? It's not... This is a historic error, that's been recognized by socialists for a long time. You don't just tweet general strike and it magically appears. Orgs don't just arise. You have to build them, and that means getting involved. So contact your local people and see what they need. All right. Back to the chat. What do we have? Somebody says, oh man, that Patsock Trump equals Mao shit. Yeah, so I made a post on the YouTube community post. This was something I pulled off of Twitter. And just really, I'll put it on the screen. The daily Patsock fail, I guess. It's, where did they come from? Where do they come from? Where did it go? Here we go. So, Patsock's just fucking stop challenge. This was an account at RTSG_prism_. Trumpism is Maoism. What? Trump was literally a landlord. Trump's movement is a Maoist movement. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't criticize Trump because, this is tongue-in-cheek here. I don't know if it's coming across. The original poster was yelling at somebody in the comments, like, where did I say Trump? I said his movement. Trumpism. Like, where do you think the movement came? Anyway, Trumpism is Maoism. Trump's movement is a Maoist movement. Rural masses trump urbanite decadence and elitism. First of all, you're just describing fascism, actually. But as far as the rural masses, like the vast majority of people live in cities. Like he did the fallacy here, or they, I don't know really anything about this person. The vast swaths of like red territory here, nobody fucking lives in them. Like if you actually look at a map, I'm not sure if I have one here, but if you look at a map of where the population lines up, it is mostly in the cities. So this whole like the USA is, I mean, we went through all this already in 2016, 2017, and they're just rehashing errors from that time. So I don't know. Just wanted to spotlight that. But that's one of the pictures that they retweeted. Are these people even serious? Well, actually, let's look at some of who liked the post, because that's always interesting. Just click on the the number of likes, and you can see who liked it. So here are some of the gems of people who liked it. There were about 100 likes at the time that I took these screenshots. The first one, at Jackson19 and a bunch of threes, the bio is anti-degenerate and racist. Sounds very socialist. Cool. The next one, we got a Orthodox Christianity symbol. I believe that is theirs, that the Orthodox cross. U.S. flag, Russian flag. LaRouche Marxism-Leninism, 2036. So we got some Moppin and Infracell buzzwords in there. What else do we have? Down there, Garbanzo the Hated. I do Christian and other Abrahamic aesthetics in the style of retro Soviet art or minimalism. Okay. Very progressive, cool. At the bottom, Russian flag, seeing beyond the visible spectrum. It's all the usual kind of stuff you'd expect. Let's look at some more. We got the second one there, Demond Davis, Marxist-Leninist, Maoist, and I believe that there's an S missing, but that I think is supposed to say fascist. Okay, very serious. We got some Infracell gorilla emoji, and then the Infracell red, green sort of avatar there that a lot of the bots and sock puppets use. More of the Russian flags. And who else do we have here? It's just, is it serious? Is it serious? These are the kinds of people that you find turning up in support of stuff like that. And I don't know. We got, again, on this screen, the gorilla emojis, enemy of the synthetic left. Down at the bottom, LaRouche enjoyer. So, it's this is what you find. Just the usual suspects and just a bunch of garbage. So that's the dumpster fire that passes as U.S. anti-imperialism today. Let's continue with the chat. Tried to force full-time, what is this? Tried to force WFH full-time with my employer because of your last COVID stream. Work from home. Sorry, that took me way too long. They want us in at least one day. Well, when part 3 goes up, try it again. Because, or just look up National Geographic brain shrinkage. Send that. I mean, if you already have a dialogue going, try sending that. That may get you somewhere. COVID is not something to fuck around with. Anyway, Pat Socks continue to amaze me in how many bad tweets they can do. This is patriotic socialists. Anyway, yes, expect nothing else from them. It is just a gigantic dumpster fire. Somebody says, I enjoy all the work that you do, but your COVID coverage has been great. Thank you. It pains me that I've not been able to get part 3 of the COVID update yet. I promise it'll be worth the wait when it's up. Next comment. Have I seen that Finland has applied to join NATO? They share a huge border with Russia. Would be seen as a sign of aggression. Yeah, I'm sure Russia would interpret that. I don't really see any winners in this situation. What we need is a socialist movement again. And we don't have that. And so we are handing over history to capitalists. That's the situation, and I don't really want to comment on it further. Yes, I saw that. I'm not sure what Finland What I didn't see is what Finland's thought process was on it. Um, and I don't know why they're doing that exactly. I think that Sweden had also applied. I don't know. I don't know. Yes, people should be opposing NATO. Also, Russia is not in a great situation either. As far as, the country that did the most to end fascism in World War II no longer exists. People need to accept that. The USSR no longer exists. The country which overthrew the USSR and supplanted it is now currently occupying that space. It's not a good situation for socialism, and socialists need to work on that. We also need to work on dismantling NATO. This is a global project, socialism. And people are substituting capitalist struggles for proletarian struggle. This is really a massive backslide from where we were 40 or 50 years ago. And that's the case whether you're in a actually socialist country or whether you are in a capitalist country with a labor movement or something like that wasn't in power. There's been backslide across the board, and that's just the fact. We need to actually remedy that. So, can I talk about the shortage in baby formula in the global supply chain? My job said there was a recall on some, and now don't have any. Yes, I did read about that. I know about as much as anybody does about that. One thing I found shocking was that only 6% of babies are breastfed. That is not really good. I understand we live in a society that puts massive constraints on people. I had no idea it was to that extent. Formula is not awful. It's nutritionally in many ways equivalent to breast milk, but not 100%. Parts of the mother's immune system are passed through breast milk. There's also just other things about breastfeeding, like actually what's coming out changes over time. Like it starts off a certain way, and just the contents of what's being fed to the baby changes over the course of the feeding. So there's a lot of little tricks and hacks that nature has built in there. It's best. I understand that sometimes people aren't able to do it. I'm not trying to shame people for that. What I'm saying is that as a society we should be clearly there's a situation now where people are not able to breastfeed. It's like 94% of people are not breastfeeding. I was kind of shocked at that. In fact, I don't know if somebody can double check that would be good. It looked like it was coming from a good source. But anyway, the bottom line is there's a huge reliance on formula, which, like I said, it's not awful. It's a decent thing. Arguably, breastfeeding is still a bit better. People can't for different reasons, but it's true that breastfeeding is difficult. People who are breastfeeding need to eat several hundred more calories per day. Breast milk is basically filtered blood, so it's just produced by your body, and that doesn't come out of thin air. You got to eat extra food to do it, and it takes time. It takes a toll on your body to feed the baby. There's definitely costs associated with it. Nobody's saying it's easy. There was a lot of obnoxious people saying breastfeeding is free, just do that. People can't always do it is the point. And they can't because largely of the impositions that the society, which does not value life, human or otherwise, puts on us. That's capitalism. It's there you go. So as far as the cause of the shortage, I am not sure. But yes, it's a big problem. I think it was 40% of brands were sold out as of a few days ago. I don't know what's going on there, but those are some of the most vulnerable babies, or some of the most vulnerable people who exist in our society. In any human society, they're defenseless. So, or virtually defenseless. I guess somebody's trying to harm a baby, they can cry. Actually, I was watching a thing about that. babies' cuteness, like why we respond to babies as being cute. It's like literally just part of our instinct to care for them because they're so helpless. But anyway, yeah, I don't know what's driving it. If anybody knows, please do share in the chat. But yeah, anyway, just shocking. I mean, we're reaching levels now. You know, for me, back when I started doing all this stuff about 20 years ago, and, you know, being against the Bush-Cheney wars and, you know, 9/11 and, like, all the stuff that, all the, you know, Patriot Act and all that stuff, people in those movements were warning about how bad it was going to get if nothing changed. And guess what? Nothing changed. We're there now. That bad future that we were warning about back then, it's here today. And it's things like housing costing 3 times what it's supposed to or more. It's shortages of baby formula. It's all this stuff. So, you know, it's dying oceans, it's etc. Actually, on that note, we've talked about plastic before in the oceans. Let's do a little something on the oceans. So I have some other things related to climate change that I do want to get to eventually, but let's do another on plastic. And where did I put this? So we have touched on this before. How did I put these? Tell you, still. Oh, there it is. Ironing out the bugs in these live streams. So we've talked about this before. This is a CNN article from 2019. You could be swallowing a credit card's weight in plastic every week. Why? Where's it coming from? Well, here are the prime sources. So you can read there. The research was commissioned by the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, for its report, No Plastic in Nature, Assessing Plastic Ingestion from Nature to People. It found that the average person consumes as many as 1,769 particles of plastic every week just by drinking water, bottled or from the tap. But there could be large regional variations. And again, I use a water filter connected to the tap. Costs a couple $100. If you can save up for it, probably going to save you a lot of money. And it can save you, like, from adding to plastic use as far as if you buy bottled water. If you get yourself, like, a good quality water filter that hooks up to the tap and then just bottle your own water, it's not quite as well filtered as it's going to be from, like, bottled necessarily, but that stuff is bottled tap water, or it's filtered tap water is what it is. So you can do your own, and then you can use a reusable bottle rather than just adding huge heaps of plastic in the form of water bottles to the recycling bin, which a lot of what gets put in the recycling doesn't actually get recycled. Where does it end up? Well, continuing, it quotes a 2018 study that found twice as much plastic in water in the United States and India than in European or Indonesian tap water. Interesting. A separate study this month found that Americans eat, drink, and breathe between 74,000 and 121,000 microplastic particles each year, and those who exclusively drink bottled water rather than tap water can add up to 90,000 plastic particles to their yearly total. So you're drinking bottled water rather than tap water. Okay, maybe you're filtering out some chlorine and some other metals and impurities that may be in there, but you're replacing it with microplastic. Again, it's probably worth saving up for that. You know, go without your bottled water, start a fund. The money you were going to spend on bottled water, put it. Yeah, again, though, this is assuming that your water is like that your tap water is borderline safe. I mean, you can start with something like a Brita, but I mean, if you have lead, I don't think that it gets that out. Anyway, it's such a clusterfuck. Amazing that we have to have this conversation in 2022, but here we are. Anyway, it's something to think about when you're drinking lots of bottled water. Yeah, it's filtered, you know, for some of that stuff, but it's adding a lot of plastic in. Shellfish is the second biggest source of plastic ingestion, with the average person consuming as many as 182 microparticles from this per week. So 182 microparticles is 0.5 grams. That's a tenth of a credit card. But you can see there on the graphic that The shellfish that's if you eat shellfish. It's a distant second. It's like 1/10 of the amount that you're getting from the tap or bottled water. And then things like beer or juice, which, usually they filter that water a little bit better before putting it in those products, but that can contribute to it as well. And then salt. So why salt? Why does the salt have plastic in it? Well, where does salt come from? Some of it comes from mines, which used to be oceans, but they used to be oceans before there was plastic in the oceans. Now, if you have sea salt, that's right, you're getting sea microplastic in your salt. So yeah, anyway, the good news, I guess, is we don't eat as much salt as we drink water. But still, this is not a good situation. It just shows the extent of the plastic contamination. So then there was an article, this is from Vox, Recode, the massive unregulated source of plastic pollution you've probably never heard of. I may pick this one up at a later date because it's a really long article. It's got like 18 screenshots. But you can see there, this is the Sri Lankan Navy, a couple of soldiers working to remove debris, including tiny plastic pellets called Nurdles that are blanketing the beach near Colombo, Sri Lanka in May 2021 after the Singapore-registered container ship MV Express Pearl caught fire and sank near Colombo Harbor. So basically, these Nurdles, let me see if I can get a picture of one here. I know that there are some in some of these screenshots. That is just words. Well, anyway, they're tiny little beads. You can see one there in the picture on the left, like dead center. Nurdles mix easily with the debris floating in the Mississippi River. So basically they find fish with mouths full of these things. They're just little plastic pellets. These are basically like, they're little beads that get melted down to form other stuff made out of plastic. So the Nurdle is sort of like the, universal unit of plastic. They're just little plastic beads that can be melted and remolded into other stuff. And so they get transported in huge containers. And if those containers break or whatever happens, spilled, the Nurdles just end up in the environment. And they get eaten by all kinds of small animals. And it's not a good situation. They can clog their digestive situations. I feel like I say it's not a good situation a lot. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. So I might come back to this because, like I said, it is a long article and we haven't gotten to a lot of the chat yet. But you know what? Before we do that, one more tidbit here when it comes to stuff in the ocean and water. Now, where did I put that? Here we go. This one is short. We'll get through the whole thing. From The Guardian, sunscreen chemicals accumulating in Mediterranean seagrass finds study. UV filters absorbed by Posidiona oceanica may have damaging effects on ecosystems, scientists warn. This is by Safi Bugle. And you can see there this Posidiona oceanica seagrass meadow pictured. This is in the French Mediterranean. And it's accumulating sunscreen chemicals. I wonder how that sunscreen got in the ocean water. Well, scientists discovered ultraviolet filters in the stems of Posidiona oceanica, a seagrass species found on the coast of Mallorca and endemic to the Mediterranean Sea. The researchers believe the seagrasses, not the UV filters. The researchers believe the contamination is the result of recreational activities and waste discharges in the tourist destination. Quote, this marine enclave is impacted by port activities, water discharge, and tourism, said Dr. Silvia Diaz-Cruz, co-author of the study published in Marine Pollution Bulletin. Since the Mediterranean Sea is shallow, small, and very enclosed, concentrations of UV absorbing V's and B's, I'll tell you, UV absorbing chemicals, can reach high levels. Samples found varying concentrations of sunscreen components, including oxybenzone, avobenzone 4-methyl, benzylidine camphor, benzophenone 4, and methylparabens. While the full impact of these chemicals on seagrass remains unknown, the researchers are concerned about potential harmful effects. Quote, if we find that sunscreens affect the photosynthesis and productivity of seagrasses beyond accumulation, we will have a problem since these seagrasses play important ecological roles in the Mediterranean coasts, said co-author Professor Nona Agawin. Basidiona oceanica forms extensive meadows in the coastal Mediterranean and plays a crucial role in maintaining a healthy ocean ecosystem. Seagrass meadows are home to diverse marine species, and they act as carbon stores, while also helping to buffer coastal areas against erosion. Previous research has found that certain UV filtering sunscreen chemicals can have damaging effects on fish, turtles, and dolphins, including disrupting their reproductive systems and harming their development. So it's the same thing with the microplastics, not as the beads so much, but when the beads photodegrade when they're floating in the water, they break down into small particles. Those small particles, once ingested, are bioactive. They can disrupt some enzyme activity, hormone activity, etc. Coral reefs are also affected, and these chemicals have been prohibited in tourism destinations such as Hawaii, Florida, and Palau. Similar legislation is yet to be introduced in Mediterranean countries. The researchers emphasize the need for further research on the effects of UV filtering chemicals in seagrass meadows. Quote, if we find which sunscreen components are harmful for seagrasses, then we should better regulate and provide alternatives to protect the beachgoers and also the seagrasses, said Agawin. So, people going to the beach is not totally essential. Seagrass is, as far as maintaining, it's like one of the foundations of the ecosystem there. If anything had to go for, say, a 20-year period in the short term, definitely be people going to the beach. I love going to the beach, but, can't go to the beach if there's no beach to go to. Anyway, there's a little bit on ocean health, and again, we'll come back to that longer plastic article. That's the Nurdles article at some point. So, continuing with the chat, what else do we have here? Somebody says, I can't believe how dumb the Trumpism is Maoism thing is. I guess what they're trying to get at is that Mao's supposed thing was basing yourself in the rural peasantry against the liberal strata of the cities in a third world setting. Yeah, but the thing was, the Chinese proletariat wasn't that developed at that time, so it was still the peasantry because they were closer to feudalism. So Mao was trying to work with like what was available in China at that time. That's not the case today in like 21st century United States, like one of the most developed countries in the world. The U.S. is the industrialized core of the first world, where a rural peasantry doesn't even exist, and the revolutionary proletariat is coalesced in urban areas. You know who's closer to being the rural peasant masses, but aren't even technically? Undocumented migrant workers. Tell me how the MAGA people feel about them. Somebody says, hey, back to you, horror click. I gotta take a drink here. All right. So, let's see. Talking about unionism before, absolutely, I pass out socialist literature and talk about the groups I'm a part of with them too. This is speaking about the union. For those who are interested, it can't just be unionism, that would be economism. Yes, that is correct. Better benefits and better pay, that is, in and of itself, good, but it needs to be paired with the idea that we need to end capitalism. Otherwise, it's just economism. So, yeah. And he says, S4A, I've been telling all my line cook friends about you. I'm not a public figure, but they are. Can we have that organization book for the brain juices? Yes. As soon as I get done with part 3, that is the next thing I'm putting up. So absolutely, yes. All right. Thoughts on so-called socialist or democratic socialist John Fetterman winning the Pennsylvania U.S. Senate Democratic primary? I think you can't reform the Democratic Party. I think he's going to get in there and be about as disappointing as the rest of the squad or whatever else. I was not following him closely, so I don't know, but what I do know is you can't reform the Democratic Party. So, yeah. Um, Then he says, my local DSA has a lot of trots in its leadership, which sucks, but their rank and file are some great people. And let me say that your local DSA has a lot of trots in its leadership because your local trots got organized and took over the leadership. They can be pushed out eventually. And yeah, trots, no trots here. Trots no good. Don't like trots. You know, in the abstract, generally, I would rather listen to a Trotskyist than a Democrat, but that's about as far as it goes, I think. Anyway, and that's purely in the abstract as far as words go, but I don't know. There was a great video on Trotskyism. I actually saved it to a playlist at one point, and the original poster pulled it offline, and I didn't grab a copy of it. It had really bad audio. It was like somebody just giving like a slideshow presentation on Trotskyism, and it was in the UK where there's like a ton of Trotskyists. But it was one of the funniest things I think ever. It was very, my initial exposure to like real world Marxism as far as an org, and I wasn't a member, but I was just in a place where there were these people, was the ISO. My God, they turned me off to socialism. This was before I had fully grasped the whole, like, what is Trotskyism things years and years ago. But I was like, holy fuck. Like, if these people ever got into power, I'd be the first ones to fucking take them out. They were just awful, awful. And anyway, this video was talking about Trotskyism in the UK, and it was like something about how much they split. I mean, it's like splitting parties and selling newspapers. It seemed to be like the two main features of Trotskyism. That and just fucking endlessly talking about Stalinism, which largely was over 70 fucking years ago. Like, move on. Your guy Trotsky is gone. Like, I'm sorry, but anyway. Just, when he was still alive and there was a relevant power struggle maybe to be had, I mean, maybe, but they've had forever, and they just haven't done anything with it, but just a lot of hot air about fucking Stalinism. And, this is not a, like, Stalin did nothing wrong channel, but, like, for fuck's sake, like, at least they ran a country. Anyway. The thing about splitting parties, though, that I found amusing was, I guess, according to the information that they were presenting, it was that there was at one time as many Fourth Internationals as there were Trotskyist parties. I mean, I don't know how anybody looks at that and just doesn't think it's totally absurd on its face, but I guess they didn't. All right. I went with one of my local DSA's protests against Kirsten Sinema back when she was blocking Build Back Better. Lots of cool people there. Yeah, it's good. I mean, you got to get to the fundamental issue, which is this is the Democratic Party, which is not really taking, you're blocked at any significant level of power from taking action against a Kirsten Sinema or a Joe Manchin or anybody like that. The people who own the party want them there, and they refuse to, do anything about it. So it's the rotating villain that they use as their excuse to just not do whatever they don't want to do. So, reminder that the Bolsheviks started as a reading group. Yeah. But the start of the Bolsheviks as a reading group was like over a century ago. It can be as simple as talking with your neighbors or coworkers or fellow tenants or friends about learning class conscious theory. It can, but the problem to me is the ratio of that to, it actually turning into the Bolsheviks. Believe me, if it was just turning into the Bolshevik party everywhere, I would not be complaining. That's not the problem. Let's see. Okay, here's a comment. Do you think that there is any validity to the idea that Marxists in the U.S. should avoid the label socialist, Marxist, communist due to the severity and scale of the Red Scare, especially when we need action ASAP for climate collapse. No. Bernie Sanders, again, this is a very useful reference point that we can get a lot of data from about doing more left of the Democratic Party mainstream, doing left organizing and trying to build something there. He fucked it up in major ways, but we can still get a lot of data out of that. He showed you can use the label socialist, and it actually attracted a lot of younger people to it. And by younger, I just mean people under 40, generally. So no, I don't think that there's validity to that at all. I think that we should embrace it, and you're not going to get everybody on board with the label. There's a reason that actually this channel itself, Socialism for All. Somebody asked me once, why don't you call it Communism for All? And they weren't saying it sarcastically. They were like just asking, why don't I call it Communism for All? Because I lean Marxist-Leninist. And that's the majority of like what I teach as far as audiobooks and stuff like that. And I said, well, I think that, when it comes down to it, I don't avoid the term communist. But Marx and Engels use socialist. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't. Yes, I know that there was the split between socialist being a bit more middle-class reformist and communist being more working class. I don't know if it necessarily has that exact same connotation in the U.S. I think, if anything, I would, I'm more hesitant at this stage about saying communist specifically. I think Marxist-Leninist is a more descriptive label that leaves more of an opening. It means the same thing. Basically, doing a lot of processing here. You get left comms and people like that. Marx and Engels also used communism, and there's people who say that they're not Marxist-Leninist, but they are communist. So, I don't know, it gets confusing, but I guess that's kind of just my point, is terms are what people make of them. If anything, we shouldn't be saying Marxist, because Marx was, not a Marxist, quote unquote. But the reason that I do Socialism for All, it started off as left unity. I quickly realized that wasn't really going to fly. The anarchists were not getting along with anybody else. But it's, Socialism for All. I did take the hammer and sickle as the avatar for the channel because that visually says like what it's about, that this is socialism, not in some like half-assed reformist sense, but socialism in the international, historical tradition that actually went into, not like what we would call social democracy today. I know I'm kind of rambling here. I'm trying to just find a point in all of this where there's some reason not to use any of these terms. I think that the term I use least is communist because I think, I don't mind using that term around other people who are already comfortable with it. But I think that if there's one thing out of that scares people in the U.S. away, it's probably that. Sanders, though, showed that socialism is an entirely rehabilitatable term. Now, a lot of people use that, and they don't mean it quite in the same way. They may mean it in the more reformist sense, but that's fine. It just leaves more of an opening for us to do what we're doing. And I've actually found that, building this channel, is that I got a lot of people who started out more in that vein, and they came over to Marxism-Leninism and more of that tradition. So I don't know what I'm saying, but no, you know what I'm saying. I don't know if there's some grand point to this. I'm searching for a conclusion and I'm not really finding one, but no, I don't really think so. I think that we need to, including the term communist, we need to rehabilitate these things as fast as possible. I guess that's my point. We need to rehabilitate them as fast as possible, but no faster. It's like Einstein said, you should always make your communications as simple as possible, but no simpler, because then you're going to be leaving stuff out. We should rehabilitate all these terms as quickly as possible, but no faster. And, Sanders showed he dusted off socialist for sure, building off of efforts like Occupy and other stuff that was going on in the anti-capitalist realm post 2008. But so no. I mean, I think some common sense is needed at times, but generally speaking, no. So that said, I think one thing that it's important to realize is that most people are not in the U.S. necessarily going to know what it means. So you're probably better off explaining your views rather than, I mean, you can say I'm a socialist or I'm a Marxist and quickly follow up with what that means, because people are not going to know what it means. And, we do live in an age today, not to get too, hackneyed here, but, we are living in the world of the internet now. And even kind of boomers are realizing that they, growing up or just, existing within the U.S. fabricated bubble of just the bullshit that we're fed here in the U.S. in the media. The internet is breaking a lot of that up, and even the boomers who've gotten into social media have realized that they are behind the curve, and they're trying to actually catch up on what any of this stuff means. It's a decent opportunity for us to get out there and actually inform people on this is what all these terms really mean. That said, I think a lot of that education is needed. So if you just say, oh, I'm a Marxist-Leninist, or I'm a left com or a council communist, or people are going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? So I think explaining the views probably makes the most sense, and we shouldn't be overly hung up on labels, but don't hide it either. So, because eventually we do have to make that leap of, the black shirts and reds leap, getting people to really question, a lot of the narrative that they've been told about, quote, state socialism, So we eventually do have to clear the way for that, but do it as quickly as possible, but no more quickly. We want it to actually work. So, yeah. Well, let's see. A lot of people became sympathetic to Marxism because the Black Panthers helped them and they called themselves Marxists. Yeah, this is all part of rehabilitating the term. Show people what it is, So, yeah. All my friends are reactionary as fuck. You got to read and encourage other working people to read. Audiobooks are so accessible and easy to send to friends. Yeah, so, those were two different comments from, I swear, Twitch assigning usernames different colors. I'm getting so many that are the same color right next to each other, but actually from different people. All my friends are reactionary as fuck. I've sent books, podcasts, this channel. They just say I'm a communist paid by Putin. Well, I'd probably start by informing them Russia has not been socialist for over 30 years, and arguably longer than that if you want to criticize some of the behavior of, late stage USSR. But they're definitely openly not socialist for 3 decades now. So your friends are ignorant as shit. And yeah, there's certainly a correlation between being ignorant and being reactionary. So that's unfortunate. I don't know. Keep working on them. I mean, yeah, there was somebody I knew who I was trying to explain this to, and it was just I don't know. People get these ideas in their head. Somebody thought corporations needed more credit for the good stuff they're doing, and I'm just holy shit, your priorities fucked up? But that's where a lot of people are. We got to remember just not to necessarily, spend appropriate amounts of time on them. Let's put it that way, because there's other people you can probably try to reach instead. So, yeah. There's a lot of discussion in the chat about, how to approach people and this and that. I'll just sort of let that go to the chat. Trump could have been a Democrat just as easily as a Republican. By design, Democrats exist to lose. Yes, they're paid to lose. The parties are converging in many ways. I think that Trump's more overt white nationalist callbacks would not have flown as well in the Democratic Party. I think that the base for that definitely was the Republican Party, that was more appropriate. The policies in many places, though, are very similar. I mean, there's overall, both parties are owned by the 1%, and they exist to further imperialism and the neoliberal conservative counter-reaction. So They both serve it in their own way. It's good cop, bad cop. You know, in the good cop, bad cop ploy, the good cop and the bad cop act differently. The good cop is nice to you. They give you a cup of water. They give you a donut. The bad cop gets in your face and roughs you up and this and that. And then the good cop steps in and says, whoa, whoa, that's out of line. Go cool off. Hey, I'm sorry about my partner there. But they're both there for the exact... God damn, that is irritating. They're both there for the exact same reason. They're there to bust you. They're paid by the same people. They're on the same team. So, good cop, bad cop. I think that's how I like to explain it. Somebody says, don't isolate yourself from friends. Maybe just don't get political with certain people. Yeah, I mean, yes, to a point. Sometimes it's hard to know until it's too late. And some people, I mean, I knew this one person who was like this avid COVID denier. Anybody who's seen my channel knew that wasn't really going to fly. So they kept bringing stuff up. And they're like, yeah, it's a hoax. And I'm like, but anyway, we wound up having discussions and they got like furious at me just pointing out like basic facts. And so, yeah, friends are functionally, structurally, tactically good to have. Like, and people have fewer friends today than they had 20 years ago. There have been studies on that. That's not good. So yeah, don't deliberately isolate yourself from people for sure. But it sucks that we live in such a reactionary country with so many reactionary working class people who have picked up and adopted bourgeois ideology. Then, yeah, somebody points out there's the quote, the U.S. is also a one-party state, but with typical extravagance, they insist on having two of them. So, yeah, somebody says, I saw Anna Kasparian of TYT and Jacobin come to the conclusion that Democrats are anti-left. Somebody I think brought this up yesterday. Better late than never. If somebody can send me a link on that, you know what? Let me just. I'll do it. I can do that. Democrats anti-left. All right, I'll look that up later. But yeah, better late than never, I guess. But she would certainly be in the relative right wing of any broad U.S. left. So let's see. Could Roe v. Wade being overturned be a signal by the bourgeoisie that they have given up on trying to save liberalism and are just going full on straight up fascism? I think there have been many. Signals of that. Again, I point to 9/11, the Bush-Cheney, massive, unprecedented right-wing push. People say things like the U.S. was always fascist, this and that. Yeah, and then there's the age where there's no longer an organized labor movement, there's no longer a left, there's no longer really much organized resistance, and they're launching multiple wars of just like, yes, absolutely. There's been coups since forever in South America and this and that. I think that they're getting more and more brazen about it is my point, and I think that the last 20 years have seen, I mean, literally the announcement of, we were talking about this yesterday, the new American century. And I think that that was a dramatic escalation of all the policies that today, people who came into politics 10 years ago might take for granted, but were not the same policies 25 years ago. It's always been there. Like, the U.S. has been an empire. I'm not trying to say that it hasn't been. But there was a tone shift, for sure. This sort of like more of an attack on liberalism, and yes, I think that there have been many indications of that. It's not going to be like a straight regurgitation of Italian fascism, etc. There's going to be like new twists and spins due to just the lines of history and circumstance, slightly different conditions. The overall principles are still going to be the same, though, because the overall guiding system is still capitalism. The overall class interests are still the same. The overall property relations are the same. But some of the particulars may be different. So yeah, I think that there are many indications of that. This being one of them, and it's again, if people don't get organized now, like I said, it's already way overdue. If it doesn't happen in the next 5 years, I don't really see there being any chance at all. I think you'd just see complete collapse and people standing around watching it collapse. So I hope it doesn't come to that. That's why I'm doing this channel, trying to point that out. But I mean, this is not a game. Like you do not get unlimited chances here. You really don't. So yeah. Oh, let's see. What else do we have in the chat? I know I'm way behind the chat here. That's fine. I just felt like talking today. So somebody says, the algorithm never showed me any of these communist jokers. And again, they're not really, they're fascists, like Haas or Maupin or any of these weirdos. So when I heard about, why did my mind, when you said any of these weirdos, why did my mind immediately cough up Peter Coffin and that fucking unitard? Anyway, I thought it was, so when I heard about patriotic socialism, I just thought it was some strategy for socialist outreach. Seems to me that as long as there are proles and good faith communists who want to do good faith appeals to patriots to fight the class that oppresses the U.S., especially the global South, more power to them. I learned from Lenin on this channel we would ideally want sworn service members to flip on their military bosses and do civil war against the capitalists. Yes, that was one of the, was it 21 conditions to get into the Comintern, was you had to be trying to do organizing within the military. Secretly, obviously. I can't view these people literally holding communist flags, or I can't imagine them not in some way making this decision to do civil unless it was in the name of country and patriotism. So maybe a genuinely socialist PATSOK movement would be... this started... you kind of lost me somewhere there. I didn't entirely process that comment. So I'm going to discard it after my comment about the Comintern. The point is that any kind of, patriotism... Is my graphics showing up, by the way? It's not in the stream manager. I don't know why that is. But I guess I'll never know because I'm way past the bottom of the chat. But anyway, hopefully the graphic is showing up. You can't do patriotism in imperialist countries. Let me, it's one of those don't make me tap the sign moments, but I don't mind tapping the sign here. Where did it go? Where did it go? Do I not have this anymore? There we go. Don't make me tap the sign. Yeah, the U.S. is not super well regarded around the world. It's actually regarded as like one of the biggest threats to world peace, if not the biggest threat to world peace in many countries. So, U.S. patriotism or patriotism in any imperialist country, not a good look. We should be talking about dismantling these systems, not being patriotic towards them. That has very bad histories of social chauvinism and allying with the bourgeoisie, opportunism, class collaboration. We don't want that. So there are situations where that can work outside of imperialist countries. But anyway. Let's see. Real question for chat. Non-BPA plastic reusable bottle, glass bottle, or metal bottle. It was anti-metal because it tastes funky, but a newer metal one I bought recently isn't bad. So if you're going to do metal, I'd say stainless steel. Is probably, from what I understand, the least likely to leach. I would stay away from aluminum. Glass is good. The problem is it's very fragile. So if you're carrying it in a bag, you would need to put padding around it because if you hit something hard, smash. Not a good thing. Non-BPA plastic. I don't know if you're going to wind up with the same sort of microplastic situation in that case. Maybe you can find some studies on that. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I like metal or or glass, I mean, obviously glass, like when you're not out and about, but like, yeah, if you're using glass out and about, you have to be really careful about it breaking because it can literally like, if you have it in a backpack or something and somebody like bumps into you really hard or like shoves you into something even accidentally or you trip or whatever, I mean, smashing that, it can like cut up your back really bad. So anyway, all right. Let's see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you are going to wind up with the same microplastic situation in that case. So, all right. Skipping over some more discussion of the patriotism thing. We've done this. We've done this a lot, and there are audiobooks about it on the channel as well. Somebody says, even if you join for college or whatever, boot camp is amazing at brainwashing. The U.S. empire has mastered basic psychology to work in their imperialistic goals. Yes, I remember in one of my intro sociology classes, we watched a documentary about, actually, I'm going to see if I can find that, U.S. Marines boot camp training. They treat you, or they teach you to dehumanize the enemy so quickly. It's very effective. It's very effective. I'll see if I can get maybe a copy of that for the channel. It was just really good. Somebody says, I'd recommend watching Left Flank Vets. They're all veterans from Iraq, Afghanistan, who are now communists. Yeah, I remember when Iraq Vets Against the War popped up. That's really important. They're veterans who are now communists, and they have a much better understanding of the relationship between service members, the military, and socialism. So, yeah, I recommend that. The problem is trying to hold on to that narrative is very, very difficult. So, when I keep saying people need to do the difficult work of building organizations, because we really do, these narratives are difficult for us to hang on to. And we need lots of people in an organized way, building them and hanging on to them. So anyway, do I think that the next generation and the planet have a future, or are we fucked? I think that there's still the possibility for a future, but I think that massive cleanup needs to happen. Actually, I'm not sure if I have a graphic of it or not. Let me see. But somebody was showing the, how the carbon emissions need to be cut dramatically in order to reach the climate goals? Well, I guess it was like in the last year. In the last year, it was like a record amount. So it was like the absolute opposite direction. I don't think I have the graphic. It was the absolute opposite direction that the emissions needed to be going in. So, yeah, there's still time, but there's less and less time with each passing year. So we need to do it now. That's why I'm doing this channel, because we need to do this. I can't emphasize that enough. Actually, I had some dipshit commenting on that long post that I was doing a couple weeks ago about the need for mass organizing, and they were basically defending being terminally online. And this was a kind of like mini Debate Bro Junior type of small channel, kind of wannabe Debate Bro. And this was a person that I didn't really respect from past, interactions in the sort of socialist underground world. And I was like, look, get off my channel. I don't want people defending being terminally online, etc. They're basically trying to post this sort of condescending thing in defense of people who don't do any real world organization. And I read about 3 sentences of it. I was like, get the fuck off the channel. Get out of here. It's like the absolute last thing that people need to be doing is defending like terminally online bullshit. And, it was not surprising to me this individual was triggered and then started like crying about it. But I don't care. I can't get far enough away from people like that. I have actively worked to try to get them the fuck out of my audience. Literally, they will just hold back this movement. You need to be doing real world organizing, and you need to be doing it yesterday. You need to be doing it 10 years ago. You need to be doing it 50 years ago. That's how far behind we are on this. The left has been in decline, we'll just say 1960. So 60, 65 years at this point. That's how long the U.S. left has been in fairly open decline. Yes, we've been able to have some new conversations in that time. Overall, the numbers have gone down. The amount of organization has gone down. We have seen communist countries get overthrown, or countries under communist leadership get reverted back to capitalism. We don't have time. We don't have time. Go do it now. Stop asking what to do and go do something. If it's not working, try something else. But seriously, it's not a game and we're running out of time. Anyway, so let's see. Late for the stream. How much longer will it go? Well, I usually do between an hour and a half or 2 hours. And so, I don't know. We got about 15, 20 minutes left. Of course, this comment was probably posted an hour ago, so I'm sure you're happy. You've caught a lot of it. All right. What else do we have in the chat here? If you ever read any Soviet Revolution history, it's shocking that they kept Trotsky around that long. It felt like he just rebelled to rebel like some whiny teenager. I mean, I think he wanted to be in charge. You know, I agree he did it in an extraordinarily annoying way. Now, in fairness, Trotsky made contributions, and I don't want to say that he didn't. I had a very angry Trotskyist who at one point was a $5 patron or $10 patron and then got like massively upset when I said something against Trotsky. And it's like, look, I'm not a Trotskyist channel, so I don't know exactly what you're expecting. But it's just kind of never enough for them is what I feel like. Trotsky made significant contributions, okay? Not trying to say that. But when it came down to the power struggle between him and Stalin, insufferable comes to mind for sure. So yeah, and it just the Trotsky cult I'm just not a fan of. Move the fuck on. So, and like I get to some extent that, you know, they want to say that the principles that they discovered in their analysis of the early USSR are still applicable today. I think some of that is contestable. I mean, to the extent that you think that they're even valid. I think that it's contestable today. But really, I think a lot of it is so irrelevant. I mean, you had fucking... I don't know if I've mentioned this on the stream or not before, but that anarchist outlet, Crime Think, think with a C on the end, not a K, they were attacking PSL. I think I did mention this. PSL was getting involved in the Roe v. Wade abortion... Roe v. Wade, got distracted. Roe v. Wade anti-abortion... You know what I'm saying. When Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned, pro-abortion rights demonstration. PSL was coming out for abortion rights. I don't know why that was so hard to say. But Crime Think was literally attacking, they're like, Stalinists are trying to like overtake the, the struggle for abortion rights. And it's like, pretty much anybody that shows up in support of abortion rights should be welcomed. Seriously, because we need it right now. Whether or not you want to give them like a lot of political leadership is up to you, but Stalinists, PSL, if anything, is crypto-Trotskyist. I know most of the leadership is most of the membership is Marxist-Leninist, but I think that they have kind of a history of like, they say they're Marxist and Leninist. There's like some sort of crypto-Trotskyist history, which again, I think that they have largely grown out of as an organization at this point. But I think that it's just like ironic of all the people to call Stalinist, you know what I mean? You want to call Grover Furr a Stalinist, okay? That like people who actually sort of like live and breathe for that stuff. Okay, fine. But like seriously, just give it a fucking rest. It's so irrelevant. So yeah, Crime Think was going around trying to like do this hysteria about how like Stalinists are doing abortion rights activism and the left shouldn't tolerate them. It's just like anarchists. What can you say? But not Crime Think's finest moment. Let's put it that way. Somebody says, my childhood best friend blocked me everywhere, including my number and called me a Wu-Mao for merely suggesting that the narrative he gets on China in this country is skewed by the propaganda machine. It's very hard to be friends with those who just swallow up all the garbage anyone says about socialism. Yes, it is. Yes, it definitely is. All the more reason to get into whatever orgs are active in your area and meet people, because you will feel less alone and you will see what's going on. And, I was talking with somebody the other day who, is not like a hardcore Marxist by any stretch, but, is progressive and has done work going out to support Palestinian farmers, like against Israel. And, there's people doing radical stuff in need of support, whether or not they're like in your particular Vanguard clique or like Discord server or whatever. You need to get out and meet people and make connections. That's how we're going to build the left. So, yeah, I'm sorry your friend sounds like a total asshole. And like, it's nice having childhood friends because, your story of who you are through your life, people who were there when you were younger, they help you remember that person that you were. And obviously we all have cringe moments, but our life, people we've shared it with help us remember that life. And it sucks to lose people, close to you for a long period of time, because you can feel like you're losing part of yourself. And that sucks. Ultimately, it's on them. And the good news is you do still have a future and you can meet even better people. Not everybody you meet in a left org is going to be, sterling example of humanity. You will even meet some people who are really fucked up and dysfunctional, actually. That's actually why I tend to recommend at this stage of, many people have just never been in an org before. Why do I say join the larger stuff? Because it's going to be a bit more, representative of like not super underground weirdos. There's some real fucked up people like lurking in these sheltered underground orgs. That's not to say that every small org is weird or full of bad people or anything like that. I'm not trying to say that at all. There's many good orgs that are just smaller, and they will be bigger at some point. But there's also people who sort of become fixtures on their local left, and they're massively dysfunctional. Anyway, just needed a moment to vent about that. It's been something that's bothered me for a long time. But the idea is that as these things pull in more and more millions of members from just the general population, the more just sort of average people you're going to find. And that's really what I would like to see. So for many reasons. But that sucks, and I'm sorry. Hey, at least you're here and you're connecting with some other people who it's not going to be exactly the same as your childhood friend, but there's people. So speaking of, actually, you know what? There's a YouTube commenter who is a trans woman, I believe was a trans woman, and is having a super hard time. If I know a lot of comrades on Twitter are trans women and seem like pretty, connected in with networks and stuff. I was talking to this person who follows S4A because they're pretty despondent. I guess a lot of the people in their sort of like network are more liberals, and they feel turfy and not inclusive, and that they have acted shitty towards them, and that they're having a hard time finding other trans-inclusive comrades that are actually socialist that they can talk with and just have some day-to-day support, because they're feeling very isolated. I was asking them if they'd be interested in seeing if I could connect them with. I know that there's a lot of trans comrades on Twitter in particular, but if people want to like step up for that, as far as just sort of making introductions or like making a new friend, there's definitely a comrade in need of some social support. If anybody wants to reach out for that, that'd be great. So we're getting into like the last 10 minutes or so of the stream. Let's see what else is in the chat. Somebody says, where am I reading the chats from? I actually go through the chats in order. This is more of a facilitated discussion, not just reaction. Uh, so, no, I'm not trying to do like react live on stream. I'm trying to actually have an interesting discussion here. So, I figure if somebody posted a comment 30 minutes ago, hopefully, hopefully that's still a valid thought. It didn't just merely expire for being 31 minutes old. So no, I try to just go through the chat and respond to everything that everybody posts. I do skim over some stuff, but if you hang around these chats long enough, eventually we'll cover every topic eventually. So I just I don't feel like responding to every single point every single day, but eventually we'll get to sort of everything. Would I be open to doing audiobooks on Althusser and Althusserians such as Wolf, Varoufakis, etc. in the future once May is over? It's not a priority. That I'll put it that way. I've already done a playlist. It's called Understanding Richard Wolff. There's like 10 or 12 videos in it. I'm not a big Richard Wolff fan, to say the least. He's better than a lot of the other talking heads out there. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big Varoufakis fan either. I haven't listened to as much Varoufakis, but that there's a guy who's actually in a position to do something and didn't. And I know that there are some extenuating circumstances. I just don't know that he's the guy necessarily to be taken center stage at this point. Again, better than a lot of the other talking heads that people could be listening to. But we need a movement that can eclipse figures that learn how to game the bourgeois media system. Because, gaming the bourgeois media system is not fucking revolution. It's not. And, there's so much focus on which bourgeois media do you consume. And by this, I also mean bourgeois media light. A lot of the hanging with the sock dem gang type of channels is sort of wannabe bourgeois light media. And, it's just not that's not revolutionary activity. It's some basic education and this and that. But yeah, people like Wolf and things like this. No, I'm not really into it. I again, this is my perspective at least. For the earlier comments I was making about how we do not have much time, we don't have much time. I would much prefer to look at movements that I think there is some potential to emulate in some way for results now. Now, I will say about Wolf, he does talk about certain, left. I know he references Spain, I think, a lot, where there's a government comprised of different left parties. Don't know if any of them are revolutionary, but within bourgeois democracy, this is good use of the freedoms that you have. I would like to see more of that in the U.S. That said, we need to be flooring it, and we need to be moving as fast as we can. As far as, I think Wolf is more of an anarchist or mutualist or something like that. I don't really think he's somebody that we should be getting lots of ideology from. Anyway, somebody asks, should one get leftist tattoos? That's your choice. Tattoos in generally, tattoos in general, it's a very personal decision. So that's your call. It depends what you're doing. Just think about the possible upsides and downsides of getting any tattoo. It's permanent, it's visible, it's an identifying mark as far as your rap sheet might go, but it depends how overt you want to be about it, I guess. That's your call. I'm not gonna tell people to get a tattoo or not, but think about it. Think about the pros and the cons. I don't know. Maybe people who have experiences one way or the other with that would like to share their stories, but let's see what else. Oh boy. Somebody says, I find it ironic that Infracell recently said racism doesn't really exist. This is fascism. Just a few days before the Buffalo shooting. Um, Somebody says it was in the debate with Bayer. Okay, definitely not fascist. In the 30s, when the movement in the U.S. was strongest, didn't the CPUSA do the patriotism thing, using pictures of Lincoln, etc.? Um, yeah, they also thought that the Democrats were going to be some kind of partner in like post-war, ruling the U.S. Some kind of like popular front. And what actually happened was that opportunism bit them in the ass, and we got McCarthyism instead. They said, thank you very much for eliminating the German, Italian, Japanese threat, and into the trash bin you go. So that was a miscalculation, and also that was a very long time ago. So that was 90 years ago. People have learned a lot more hidden history, alternative history, whatever about the United States. So attitudes are somewhat different as well now. The class composition of the U.S. is different. The racial and ethnic composition of the U.S. is different. We have a lot more history of anti-imperialist struggles around the world. That conversation is a lot more developed. So, sometimes some of the basics from the 20s or 30s may still apply today. Some will not. So there you go. Yeah, it was before McCarthy. It didn't work. It did not work. It didn't. No. Okay. Well, we discussed. There's discussion in the chat about it. So yeah, when it really failed was after World War II. Well, it didn't really succeed before World War II. It just didn't fail yet entirely. But here's the thing. I feel like this would be a decent note to close on. However, I am going to do a PS because I see a couple of other comments I do want to respond to. It's like any time that you try to tap into, quote, patriotic sentiment in the United States, you quickly realize the heart of that patriotic sentiment in this country is fascist. It's very reactionary. So this whole like sort of pure love of country and whatever the fuck else, when you tap into the actual manifestation of what that is and what that means to people in the US, it's reactionary. So I feel like we don't need to keep like finding this discovery over and over and over again. At some point, just realize that like that's what US patriotism is. You can't fucking harness that for social revolution. You can't. Okay? So we got to do something else. Fortunately, there's other things that we can pull from. Just don't do that. All right. Jimmy Dore put out a video defending Tucker Carlson, saying the Great Replacement theory is only Nazi stuff. Oh yeah, so this is basically it's similar to the line of Nazi apology, denialism, minimalism, which is if they're not actually wearing an SS uniform, then they're not a Nazi. You would see this a lot, where people who will do 15 neo-Nazi talking points in a row will then say, oh no, the Nazis were a really specific phenomenon and they don't exist anymore. Yeah, okay, well, it's neo-Nazism. There, now everyone's happy. And it definitely tries to take some more, quote, respectable faces. They'll sell it in any way that they can. So, yeah, anyway. All right, what else do we have? And we will, all the Pat Sock shit is white chauvinism, full stop. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, good point. I wouldn't get a tattoo that outs you as a communist. Think about prison. That is going to make you a target. There's a lot of, again, I'm not trying to give tattoo advice, but like, think about it. I'm sure that there will be some comments in the YouTube about this as well. So, just think about, is there ever a situation where you might not want the fact that you're a communist literally written on your arm or stomach or chest or something? If so, then don't get a tattoo. If you feel like you could handle any and all situations where that's the case, then, if that's your aesthetic calling, then go for it. But yeah. But again, this is not. There's a lot of serious discussions that are opened up by that question, none of which am I prepared to tackle right now. So let's not take that as the final word, I guess. Don't be fooled by the short-term gains of right opportunism in regards to appealing to populist characters. Yeah, I feel like that could be like a fortune cookie. Can somebody make Marxist fortune cookies? That would be good. Here, we'll end on this note. How do I move past the anger stage for being lied to my whole life? Somebody says it fades. It honestly kind of does. I would say get active. Get active. Put that anger into something useful. That is what anger is for. Anger is a motivating force. Sometimes it's, put into defenses and things like that, and it's used not constructively. But used properly, anger can get a lot done. You just have to be really careful because anger can kind of close you off and make you less sensitive in some ways that you can wind up overlooking some important things. So don't let it rule your life. But if you manage to stay clear-minded while using some of that energy, just realize it's dangerous. But I'm a proponent of meditation. A lot of people have a hard time with sitting meditation, but you can get into something moving like a Tai Chi or things related to Tai Chi that is, sort of light martial arts, and some of it's not even very martial artsy. It's just sort of hand movements and leg movements and things like that is not combat oriented, but that can be very relaxing. It also has shown benefits to brain structure and various things. That's, I think, a useful way to channel energy and turn that anger into clear-eyed realizations and insights. And that's I think ultimately what you want to do is turn the anger into insight and then act on that, because the anger that's coming out of the past where you didn't have the knowledge, didn't have the ability, didn't have something beat you down, it wasn't a good situation. The anger is as you realize that and harnessing that constructively to make a future where you don't repeat the same whatever it was that made you angry, whatever that situation was. That's the idea. Anyway, that's a great note to end on, so I'm going to leave it there. Thanks, as usual, to the patrons, whose names I am clicking to get up on screen right now. All the engagement is helpful, liking, sharing, subscribing, etc. Somebody was telling me in the comments, make your chat like the videos. Well, I can't make you like the videos, but I can tell you, if you do want to support the channel, it's very helpful, so please do that. Liking, sharing on your social media, subscribing, and commenting, even if it's just good video or thanks. All of that helps to boost, the channel in the YouTube algorithm, helps more people to stumble across this content. The channel has been growing at 400 or 500 a month, which is great. The more it grows, the better. I'm pretty happy with the fact that it is growing, and it's growing due to your engagement, as well as the patrons who fund my ability to sit down in front of the microphone in the first place. That's how the content gets created. So thank you very much to all the patrons. And as I mentioned in the last stream yesterday, I'm looking into, I don't know, it might not happen till June, but tallying up, or, I think Patreon lists how long somebody's been a patron since, and doing some kind of color coding for maybe every 6 months that somebody's been a patron, because some people have been around for almost 2 years, and I really appreciate that support. Again, that's how this content gets produced in the first place. That's how you have something to click on, share, subscribe, all that stuff. It's because somebody, I would produce some content regardless of funding, as I did when I was starting out. But the funding absolutely allows me to spend more time on it, so really appreciate that. Anyway, that's about it for this live stream, and we'll do another one of these next week at the latest. There's still more current event stuff to catch up on, but I do need to do some audiobooks, don't I? So it's going to be COVID update number 3, focusing on biological damage from COVID, and then it's going to be the IWW organizing manual. I have a Stalin audiobook coming up that I've started, and then we're just going to go from there. So until the next video, thanks. There we go. Right as I'm trying to conclude, my throat dries up. Until the next video, thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you next time.